The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the cracked asphalt. Jake Thompson stood with his feet firmly planted on the ground, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Clad in a vest over a button-down shirt, he gripped his cell phone tightly, his gaze locked on the burning flag sprawled out ahead of him. The vibrant red, white, and blue transformed into a raging inferno, smoke swirling into the air as if to escape the turmoil of the moment. "Yeah, I'm here," he said, his voice shaky but deliberate. "It's happening right now. I can't believe it." On the other end of the line, a voice responded, heavy with anticipation. Jake could feel his heart pounding in rhythm with the flames, both exciting and terrifying. Across the road, a row of uniformed Navy personnel stood as sentinels. They were stoic, their chests puffed out in pride as they faced the desecration of a symbol they had pledged to protect. But there was an undercurrent of tension, a palpable sense of unease that made the air thick with uncertainty. Each soldier's expression echoed the struggle between duty and the moral dilemmas forced upon them. "What are you going to do?" the voice prompted. Jake swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the rising smoke. The answer felt like a weight in his stomach. He glanced at the flag again, its flames licking towards the sky, desperate for oxygen. "I need to get closer," Jake muttered under his breath, as a surge of adrenaline pushed him forward. The soldiers noticed him then, their ranks tightening imperceptibly. He could see the glint of their polished shoes, the emblem on their hats shining in the sun. They were not just observers, they were his audience. "Jake, don't. If you go there," the voice warned, but Jake cut them off, heart racing as he refused to succumb to fear. "I have to. This is bigger than us." He disconnected the call and slipped his phone into his pocket. The soldiers watched, silent, their expressions unreadable. As he stepped away from the asphalt's heat, a gust of wind swept through, lifting the smoke and pulling it towards him, wrapping him in a shroud of confusion. The fire crackled like the gunshots he had heard in his youth, propelling him back to a time when ideals seemed clear, and he wore blind faith like armor. In that moment, Jake felt an awakening within him, a call, silent yet deafening, demanding he confront not just the flag, but what it represented. His chest tightened with a choice he had to make. "Maybe this is the only way," he murmured, sweat beading on his forehead. He looked back at the soldiers, their eyes now tracking his every move. Would they see him as an insurgent or a wayward patriot? Guilt gnawed at him, for he understood the significance of the act unfolding before him. The flag was not just fabric, it was a tapestry woven from sacrifice and pain, pride and sorrow, hope and disillusionment. Suddenly, a loud voice broke through the tension, echoing across the road. "Stop right there," a commanding officer shouted, stepping forward. His voice was a mix of authority and concern, an effort to reclaim control over the chaos. Jake froze, realizing the complexity of the path he was about to tread. The flames teased the sky, an ominous reminder that the freedom to protest came with its own peril. And that was when Jake knew he couldn't turn back anymore. The choice had been made, and with it, the first spark of his own rebellion ignited deep within him. Would he step into the fire, or would he douse it with blood, sweat, and tears? As the smoke twisted and danced around him, Jake's heart raced with the uncertainty of the unfolding conflict. The soldiers readied themselves. He could feel the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Little did he know that this moment was merely the beginning, a reckoning that would entwine their fates in ways they could never foresee. And so, standing at the precipice of both duel and dialogue, Jake prepared to confront not just the soldiers, but the very foundation of dissent itself. He held the burning flag in his mind, a symbol of everything about to change. As the smoke twisted and danced around him, Jake's heart raced with the uncertainty of the unfolding conflict. The soldiers, their eyes intense and focused, seemed to pulse with an electric tension. He was trapped in a moment of time, teetering on the brink of a decision that could either shatter the silence or ignite a full-scale storm. "Step back," the commanding officer shouted again, his voice a blend of authority and urgency. Jake felt the weight of that command pressing against him, a tangible force urging him to retreat, but rebellion fought fervently to claw its way out from within. Jake opened his mouth to respond but hesitated, his thoughts swirling like the smoke around him. "You think this is just about the flag?" he finally shouted, his voice booming across the asphalt like thunder. "It's about what it represents. It's about the people who wore this flag." The commanding officer's jaw tightened as he processed Jake's words. There was a moment, a heartbeat in time, where both men faced each other, words hanging thick in the air between them like the smoke. The soldiers stood stiffly behind their leader, their expressions an odd mix of respect and bewilderment, not quite sure how to react to this confrontation unfolding right before them. Jake could sense the atmosphere shift, tension rippling outward as curiosity began to replace hostility. "I fought for this country, too, and I know what it feels like to have your ideals questioned," Jake continued. "These flames aren't just flames. They're a cry for change, a plea for acknowledgement. You think standing behind that flag means you're standing with the people? Not anymore." Whispers ran through the ranks of soldiers. One soldier glanced at another. Did they see the truth in Jake's uprising? Did they hear the unspoken anguish buried beneath his words? The commanding officer's gaze didn't waver, yet there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes, as if he sensed the truth behind Jake's fervor. "Jake, get away from there." The voice on the other end of his disconnected call erupted in his mind, echoing his doubts while simultaneously driving him forward. He needed to be heard. He needed to be felt. He took a step closer to the burning flag, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. This is about what we're losing, about the people in the streets, the suffering that goes unnoticed. We can't pretend everything is okay anymore. "You're out of line," the officer barked, stepping forward, his posture tightening like a coiled spring ready to snap. "Disrespecting the flag, disrespecting the uniform, this is not how you make change. Is it disrespect?" Jake challenged, his voice steadying, fueled by a newfound resolve. "Or is it the only way left to make voices heard? What's more disrespectful, to let the symbol burn or to keep silent while the real battles rage on?" At that moment, the nervous energy rippling through the soldiers shifted. Some exchanged glances, questioning, pondering, while others remained rigid, eyes glued to Jake, as if he were about to leap from a cliff. The officer hesitated, realizing that the battlefield was now as much about words as it was about actions. Jake saw a flicker of uncertainty in the officer's gaze, doubt cascading like dominoes. Jake took a breath, sensing the power of the moment slip into his grasp. "Why do you fight?" Jake asked, piercing through the tension thick like the smoke. "Is it for the flag, or the people beneath it? Are we fighting for the ideals it represents, or are we just following orders? We have a choice to make, one where we can truly stand for what this flag should mean." The commanding officer opened his mouth to retort, but paused. Something within him quivered at the idea of confronting the very ideals he had been taught to uphold. The catch in his throat told Jake that change was a hard pill to swallow, even for those sworn to uphold it. Just then, a distant roar erupted from the crowd, drawing everyone's attention. It was unclear whether it came in favor of Jake's statement or against it, but in that moment, the soldiers visibly braced themselves, a warning of chaos boiling closer. There was no turning back now. The momentum shifted, and chaos took hold. The flames danced higher, and the grip on loyalty began to fray. A figure emerged from the crowd beyond the line of Navy personnel, someone Jake recognized, someone whose presence would cast shadows on every decision made from here on. As the figure drew closer, uncertainty coiled around Jake's heart. This was not just a protest. This was stepping into a torrent, where every word and action would have profound consequences. And as the crowd surged forward, the intersection of ideals, loyalty, and truth began to whirl into something far more complex, a cauldron of change where not all would leave unscathed. The twist of fate was inescapable. The battlefield of ideals had been drawn, and under the burning flag, standing there among the soldiers, Jake couldn't help but wonder, who would emerge with their beliefs intact when the flames finally died down. As the figure emerged from the crowd, Jake's heart raced with both dread and recognition. It was Isla, his younger sister, her determined stride cutting through the chaos like a beacon amidst the darkening storm. The backdrop of the burning flag flickered ominously against her silhouette, a stark symbol of the rift that had long plagued their family, a division sharpened by differing views on war, freedom, and what it meant to be American. "Jake!" Isla shouted, pushing past the throng of people. She wore a t-shirt emblazoned with bold messages of activism, a way of life she had embraced with fervor. "What are you doing? This isn't how you fight for change." Her eyes flashed with panic as she caught sight of the soldiers and the flames. "Isla, Jake began, but her presence only added fuel to the fire of his determination. She stepped forward until she was directly between him and the commanding officer, her voice unwavering. "Don't you see? This isn't just about you or me anymore. This is about everyone who feels voiceless. You're risking everything." The intensity of her words resonated in the tense air, cutting through the confusion swirling around them. Jake's gaze fell from her eyes to the flickering flames dancing around the old fabric of their nation's emblem. What if this is the only way to wake them up? To make them listen, he argued, gesturing toward the soldiers whose expressions wavered between empathy and duty. "I'm fighting for the people who can't. By burning a symbol that means so much to others," she interjected, her passionate tone rising. "Jake, there are better ways. You can't just throw away everything we've been taught to get your point across." The division simmered between them, echoing the split in the crowd, the side shouting for change, and those clinging to tradition, their beliefs as hotly contested as the flames scorching the ground. Jake's resistance ignited at Isla's words, her challenge shifting his focus. She wasn't just confronting him, she was reflecting everything he feared. Did he truly believe in his stance, or was he allowing the emotions of the moment to cloud his moral compass? Before he could respond, the commanding officer stepped forward again, his face a mask of controlled authority. "Isla, redirect your passion. You know better than to involve yourself in this. It's not safe." Despite the proximity of their confrontation, the officer's voice carried a depth of concern, trying to shield her from the potential fallout. But Isla stood firm, unyielding. "You can't keep hiding behind orders. If you stand for something, you should be courageous enough to act on it, even if it means facing the truth about what's unfolding." Jake watched her in disbelief. She had always been the idealistic one, but now she sounded like the voice of reason amidst the madness. Perhaps they were not so different after all, two sides of the same coin, both yearning for a better future, yet caught in a battle of methods. Yet the tension in the air thickened, the unsettling roars of the crowd looming like distant thunder. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, a mixture of hope and fear, waiting for a sign of direction. The soldiers were inching closer, readying themselves for whatever was to come, their loyalty pitted against their discerning souls. "Jake," Isla urged, snapping him back. "We need to stand together, not against each other. This isn't just about our family, this is about a nation searching for identity. We must find common ground, not let it burn away." Her words wormed their way into his heart, igniting a flicker of clarity amidst the chaos. Maybe it was possible to bridge the chasm, to seek understanding in an encounter shaped by suspicion. But the stakes were high. The path he chose could lead to reconciliation or deepen the divide. The flames crackled behind them, casting a haunting glow on the asphalt. He shifted his gaze to the soldiers. Their eyes projected both trepidation and a glimmer of hope, yearning for a resolution instead of confrontation. "What if we talk?" Jake proposed, addressing not just Isla and the officer, but the very essence of the conflict itself. "What if we put the fire out with dialogue, not defiance?" The commanding officer seemed to hesitate, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he processed Jake's suggestion. "Talk. In this chaos." He looked at Isla, gauging her expression. "Yes. The only way to truly move forward is to understand each other," Jake urged. A sudden cry erupted from the crowd. each voice adding to the cacophony, and the urgency for calm pressed down heavily again. "Isla, we can't afford to let another argument escalate," he said, the weight of responsibility settling on him. "Let's stand together. We can fight for change, side by side. But we have to do it with purpose, not fury." Silence enveloped Isla for a heartbeat as she processed his words. Then, her fierce demeanor softened, the fire in her eyes giving way to understanding. "All right, but we have to do this right. No more flames, no more hostility. We talk, we listen, we learn." The soldiers seemed to relax slightly, moving into a defensive yet receptive stance, eyeing Jake and Isla as they extended their hands to the larger crowd, signaling for calm. All around them, voices of anger began to ebb just a bit as hesitant leaders rose from the crowd, straining to hear, to understand, to engage. Jake's heart surged with hope for the first time amidst the chaos. They were stepping into a new narrative, a path forged in discussions, not disparagement, a dialogue that might finally heal old wounds. And as they placed their hands together, standing at the intersection of two fires, the burning flag beneath them and the passion of the crowd, they stood poised on the precipice of a change more profound than any of them could have imagined. A unity birthed from the ashes of division, daring to believe they could rise together from the flames. As Jake and Isla clasped hands amidst the thickening tension, the air crackled with a sense of possibility. The flames flickered behind them, casting shadows that mirrored the uncertainty that clung to their surroundings. Yet in that moment, among the chaos, something profound began to shift. The commanding officer stepped forward, his gaze pinning them with the weight of expectation. "If we're going to do this, everyone needs to listen," he declared, his voice louder now, cutting through the cacophony of voices. "This isn't just about a protest or a symbol. This is a moment for change, a moment to put our differences aside and talk about the future." A hush fell over the crowd as people shifted, surprised by this unexpected turn. Eyes that had burned with indignation now turned to Jake and Isla, curiosity mingling with skepticism. For a moment, Jake felt as if he stood on the precipice of a new dawn. "Exactly," Isla echoed, her voice steadying with newfound confidence. "We've been shouting at one another for too long. It's time we share our stories, understand where we each stand, and recognize that we're not so different after all." Wordlessly, people began to part like the tide, creating a circle around Jake, Isla, and the officer. It felt significant, like the earth itself was aligning, just waiting for words to flow in. The officer glanced at his soldiers, uncertainty flickering across his face. "If we're going to do this," he said slowly, "it needs to be a safe space. No weapons drawn, no aggression, just openness." He took a deliberate step back, a show of trust that gave others the courage to drop their guard. With the assembly now focused, Jake felt a surge of adrenaline course through him. "I'll start," he said, his voice resolute. "I've fought in wars, not just on this soil but across oceans. I've watched as what we fought for slipped through our fingers. I bear witness to lives lost, not just in battle but lost in the silence that follows. Families torn apart by difference." Isla squeezed his hand, nodding for encouragement. "And I've stood in the streets, among those who feel unheard, fighting for justice that rightfully belongs to everyone. I believe in the power of this nation, but I feel it slipping away when voices are silenced." The soldiers shifted, some nodding in empathy, while others appeared pensive, hearts wrestling with unvoiced feelings. The crowd was caught in the gravity of the moment, waiting for the next voice to break the tension. A young woman stepped forward, her hair framed by the light of the flames. "My brother was deployed last year. I was terrified every day he was away, praying he'd return safely. But when he came back, I saw the weight he carried, the anger he had toward the world, all because he felt forgotten. I want him to know his sacrifices meant more than just serving a flag. He means everything to our family." A murmured agreement rippled through the crowd. One by one, people began to step into the circle, sharing their truths, their fears, their hopes. An older man, weary with age, spoke of his experiences in Vietnam. I fought for a country where peace felt like a distant dream. I returned home to faces that looked past me, memories that haunt me still. All I wish for is for my grandson to live in a nation where the fire of compassion burns brighter than the flames of conflict. The stories flowed like a rushing river, each beating heart offering their own piece of the larger puzzle. Each voice added to the growing understanding that while they stood on opposing sides for years, they actually shared much: loss, love, hope, a desire to belong. Jake stood tall, watching the crowd coalesce around a unified spirit. The changes they all craved could begin with words, with empathy, with understanding, the very aspects they had considered forgotten in the chaos of division. As the stories continued, he felt Isla's grip tighten around his, and together they took in the kaleidoscope of human emotions, each layer shedding more light on the complexity of their shared existence. Time ebbed away, and as the sun began to sink below the horizon, its final rays illuminating the faces of camaraderie, a profound realization swept through the crowd. They were no longer just soldiers and protesters. They were neighbors, friends, family, all of them interconnected. Finally, when silence enveloped the crowd once more, Jake stepped forward, heart racing as he looked into each face surrounding him. We can no longer let the flames of anger and misunderstanding dictate our actions. Change begins here, together, with each story we tell. We owe it to ourselves to confront our truths, to listen, and to learn from one another. We have to be the flames of hope, not destruction. The assembled crowd stood frozen, breaths held in anticipation. Then, one by one, hands began to rise in acknowledgement, a ripple of agreement pulsing through the gathering. In that moment, as voices began to rise like a gentle chorus, Jake felt the residue of anger dissipate, hope intertwining in its place, igniting a connection that resonated from the heart of their shared humanity. They had touched the core of something greater than themselves, the why behind their battles, and in doing so, had sparked the beginning of a new conversation, a new journey. And with that, a united front, amidst whispers of understanding, they began to walk back toward the light, leaving behind the ashes of conflict, ready to forge the future together.